And I'd heard a story, well, not a story, but it was a true saying that during that period, a group of Promised Land men went to vote and they were denied. They couldn't vote. So they came back home, locked and loaded, and went back and said they was gonna vote today and ain't gonna be no voting.
Voting is such a special right we have in America, and to be able to do it is quite the honor.
I get ashamed at people that don't vote.
A lot of people are sitting on the sidelines. They're spectators rather than participators.
You must sign up to vote, to have your voice be heard.
It seems that each time we make progress, it precipitates backlash in which we then have to find ourselves recapturing lost ground.
I'm Bob Ryle, Dickson County Mayor. The County Mayor acts as the Chief Administrative Officer of the county. We manage 9 different departments, but we cooperate and work with all the other elected officials, the 9 others, to help lead the budget and take Dickson into the future with progress. As Dickson County Mayor, we support our election commission and all the work they do. Before I became county mayor about 20 years ago, I was on the Dickson County Election Commission. At that point in time, we expanded early voting and early voting sites so individuals would have time to vote well before election day and not just get jammed up on that one date.
Here in our county, or everywhere, the election commissioners are responsible for, we're actually the boss of the election administrator. And we verify the new registrations, voter registrations, we verify those. And we have meetings, of course. We approve the poll workers when we have elections. We have to approve who works. We make sure that our election administrator and their assistants are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And during an election year, of course, we have to make sure, like during early voting and different things like that, we go around to the precincts to make sure everybody that are volunteering, that's working at the polls, are doing what they're supposed to do.
Another huge thing that I think is special about Dickson County is the people that run our city and county offices. Those people get up every day, go to work, make everything flow flawlessly for our city and our county offices without any credit for that.
I've always been a big reader, and also reading about the way African Americans had to fight, had to pay to vote in years past, had to take tests, to try to vote. And also, women's suffrage and how women didn't have the right to vote. And actually, I've participated in some reenactments on women's suffrage. But I've always been interested in that, and I've always been interested in civil rights and human rights. So to me, voting was just the next step. I didn't want to wait for people to speak for me. So I wanted to be the one to speak for myself. So but I've always wanted to vote from an early age, and I've always worked. Whenever I could, I volunteered to work in the polls as a young person when I got old enough, because it was interesting to me. And mainly I wanted to make sure people were done right on both, the parties that I was affiliated with, and for both, people, you just want everything to be done right.
The NAACP has played obviously a large role to get us where we are today, where everybody can be truly represented. We're proud of the work they've done and proud of the work they'll continue to do to make sure all voters are able to participate in a 100% manner.
Yeah, I joined the NAACP years ago, but became president of the local branch. And partly because I realized that we really was trying to engage more of the younger folks and trying to get them involved to carry on the works and the legacy of the NAACP. And it was a large group of whites who were actually responsible for the initial call. I think they had about 60 people who joined. Among them was W.E.B. Du Bois, a person who has been I guess a huge influencing factor in my life. Ida B. Wells was also one of the original board members or members. And remarkably, most of the directors on the executive branch were white, except for Du Bois. I attended Fisk University, where I really became even more enamored with Du Bois and his work and his advocacy, not just for, I guess, voting rights and civil rights, but economic rights of African Americans. Here in Dickson, one of our focus was on increasing the vote because the voter turnout rate is dismal, to be honest. And we realize how important it is for that democracy is preserved, democracy is recaptured actually, because so much of our, in a real sense, the true equality of man is related to democracy. It's when we have equal voice that we have true equality. And democracy is what gives us that. And the right to vote is what brings that to us. You know, since Reconstruction, we're trying to regain grounds. Right after the Civil War, blacks were pretty powerful and had a strong voice in the local politics or in statewide politics. But then with the Great Compromise of 1877, we witnessed and experienced a backlash against our progress, and we've been trying to recapture that ground ever since.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Sweat. I am the Dickson County NAACP president of Branch 5624. And I live here in Dickson, and I've been here almost all my life except for my little stint while I went to the military. We have partnered with the churches, we have partnered with the county, we partnered with the sheriff department. We have did a lot of different things outside the box to bring that inclusivity and that equality to Dickson through our NAACP.
I've always been an advocate for voting. I started voting myself at 21, and I was in the military, and I voted absentee ballot. But my family, my mom and dad, and all other people in the community I knew voted. So that was a way of life. That's what we knew to do that. That was one thing that we was going to do as becoming a voting age.
In 1965, I was so involved with integration and immersion. The voting that I saw happen and take place here in Dickson County started with NAACP and in churches, where it was announced that we needed to get our voices heard and be represented. Therefore, we needed to sign up to vote and let people know that we had rights and that we wanted our county run this way or that way. And the only way to be heard and to do that was to register to vote. Lots of people signed up to vote, and the voting, as far as I could tell coming up as a youngster before I was of age to vote, was strong and mighty, because we knew that was our voice speaking, was to cast that ballot on that piece of paper back in the day and be counted and be heard.
Promised Land is a so important portion of Dickson County. The African American community in Dickson County is relatively small, but that does not diminish the importance of it. We've had leaders in education, business, government. The contributions are endless, so we're so proud that the Promised Land is a part of the Dickson County community.
We're sitting here live in the Promised Land School in Charlotte, Tennessee. School was established in 1880. And has served Dickson County, which is located, Charlotte happens to be the capital for Dickson County. And it served Dickson County until 1957, when it was closed because of low enrollment, and it was consolidated because this was still during the period of segregation. After the Civil War and the emancipation, the first voting that took place where African Americans were able to vote was in 1867. And that was a major milestone coming right out of slavery, basically, that black men were able to vote. In looking at the records, I see that there were a number of men who settled here in Promised Land who were able to vote, who voted in the 1867 election. Now, at that particular time, they didn't actually own land, but they had been, their settlement in Promised Land had been facilitated by the Freedmen's Bureau. And by the time they were able to basically homestead until they acquired the resources to purchase land. So most of them by 1870 had indeed purchased land.
Owning land and voting was a direct correlation. They went hand in hand. Yeah, I advocated all the time, like on a personal level, to get in conversations. I advocated, go vote. If you're a fellow, you think you got a record that, prohibits you from voting, go check it out. Go check it out.
Even at an early point, they recognized how important voting was and how important it was that you use that mechanism, that tool that was available to them, that they could be heard. Because if you just imagine what it's like, to have been, have your rights taken away from you in terms of your freedom and that kind of thing, well, voting represented freedom as well.
All right, now let's ask some tough questions.
Bob Clement, former U.S. Congressman, Tennessee, President Emeritus of Clement Museum, Dickson, Tennessee. Well, we have deep roots here, and my grandparents lived here. My grandfather was born next door over in Benton County, Big Sandy, but moved here as a child. And my grandmother was from Scottsville, Kentucky, and she and her mother, Belle Goad, moved here to operate and manage Halbrook Hotel, which was one of the authentic railroad hotels. My Aunt Annabelle Clement O'Brien, my father's sister, and myself and others in the community, Dickson, and really rallied to make this happen. And we now have the Governor Frank G. Clement Railroad Hotel Museum. It's a nonprofit 501c3, but we're real proud to have this as one of the major assets for Dickson County and surrounding counties, and really for the state of Tennessee, because this is a state museum. My father, Frank G. Clement, was born here at the Halbrook Hotel, which is now the Clement Museum, named after him. So he grew up in this place and grew up in Dickson and graduated from Dickson County High School. But at age 16, he used to tell his classmates, "I'm going to be governor of Tennessee one day." And that's remarkable for someone that didn't have a lot of contacts, didn't come from a wealthy family, but he had a big idea, a big dream, and everything he said and did from the time he was 16 to age 32 was toward that one goal and objective. But even in Dickson, at Dickson County High School, he had a great forensic teacher, his Aunt Docky Weems, that sent him to the Nationals in oratory. And years later, his enemies used to say about Frank Clement, "Don't ever go hear that so-and-so speaker. You may vote for him." I was ages 9 to 15 and 19 to 23 when my father was governor of Tennessee. I didn't get to make any decisions, but I was the fly on the wall. I would watch and observe, and I did that a lot. And so when Dad was going through those tough decisions on civil rights, I might say I was on the front row because I was watching and listening. And I remember so well, we didn't have a fence at the governor's residence as they do today in Tennessee, but we had a trooper at every tree because there were so many threats on my father's life, family's life, because tensions, emotions were very high. And my father, as governor of Tennessee, not only integrated the first public school in Tennessee, in Clinton, Tennessee, that was the first public school in the South that was integrated. And some northern agitators and others blew up, dynamited Clinton High School when 12 black kids trying to go to high school. And my father had to send the Highway Patrol and National Guard into Clinton, Tennessee to restore law and order.
Our democracy is constantly evolving, and we have many great people that have done a lot for us. We're here at the Clement Museum. You know, Frank Clement is a great example. You know, that wasn't easy for him as governor. That wasn't a popular thing when you're governor. Too many politicians tend to do what's popular, not what's hard. They don't try to teach or lead. It's opportunity lost. When you see those great people that stand up and they're willing to do what's hard, and the underlying structure is just what's right, to do what's right even though it's hard, those are the people that you read about. They have the enduring reputation.
You know, you just can't help but feel some way or other that when the farmer comes in from the field, about all he can do is to sit before the radio or the television and to sit there and sing mournfully with Tennessee Ernie Ford sold 16 cows, and what did I get? Another Republican promise and deeper in debt. Well,
I kind of felt like it was easy to be a lawmaker if you just try to identify what's right for people, what's for justice and truth, and that's just where you need to vote, and it becomes pretty simple. Politics today is so polarized. It used to be the voting populace in Tennessee, the swing voter was as large, that group of voters was as large as the Republican Party or as large as the voting pool in the Democratic camp. And those people would vote their conscience, vote for the best candidate. You know, they would go both ways. Now, that type of voter is rare. Tennessee has become very polarized. And both parties have moved almost to an extreme position, so it's much harder to find commonality and to try to advance an agenda. There's been an evolution that's really taken place in a short amount of time in Tennessee, as best I can tell. The Democratic Party used to be known as the working man's party, the working woman's party. The urban area, the corporate voters, the wealthier voters tended to be more Republican. But the Democrats seem to have lost that identity through their own doings or not.
I'll tell you what I did as a member of the U.S. Congress, and I was congressman for 15 years, for 8 terms, serving the 5th Congressional District, Davidson County, Robertson County in Tennessee. But I had town hall meetings. That was very helpful, hearing people's opinion and all that. I also would send out a postcard to every household about giving them an opportunity to call their congressman. And I believe very strongly in availability and accessibility. And as U.S. Congressman, I would meet with groups whether they agreed with me or not. And I'd always look for common ground if possible. Sometimes you can't find common ground, but at least give them the opportunity for a hearing. And I think that's critically important. But a lot of politicians, they'll only meet with their base or with their group of people that they agree with. And that's not democratic, it's not healthy, and it does not move the needle.
Presidential and federal elections are very important, and they get all the attention, which I understand why they do. It has national media coverage, but more things happen here in local government and county commission meetings and city council meetings that affect one's day-to-day life. That is where the decision is truly made to keep you safe through the sheriff's department, to have ambulance service and fire available, to have education for your family. It all happens here, and that's where people need to be involved. I'm not diminishing the importance of a federal election, but a local election in many ways is just as important, if not more important.
Well, to the youth, I would tell them to just make sure you get yourself involved, because this affects what goes on in your county, your state, your country. And you'd be surprised how many young people don't see it that way. They all think, well, it doesn't matter, it's not gonna make any difference for me. But it really does. If you keep at it or you keep voting, it's gonna make a change. But you're not gonna make a change if you just sit at home and do nothing. And why complain? Even in our county now, we have young people that'll sit around and complain about something, but none of them get involved in anything. And I'm always encouraging them to get involved and see what's going on in your county, because they'll make decisions about things that are going on here. They came for them and you did nothing, then one day they're going to come for you and nobody's going to be there to help you.
Many people think that it's not important to vote or that there's just one in a number, but we've seen many elections here recently that 1 or 2 votes actually make a difference. But we need your voice, we need you here. But just as important as voting, we need you here on every meeting for the next 4 years and be involved, because electing your officials is just the first step. There are decisions made over the next 48 months, and we're welcome to be in our audience. All of our meetings are open, all government meetings are open to the public, and you need to be here to listen and to give input to those representatives you elected. That's how you can continue to make a difference. Voting's important, but stay engaged for the 4-year term that everyone's serving.
Coming from my grandfather, great-great-grandfather, that was enslaved, that did vote, and was signed up to vote, I am very proud, and let me explain why. If that person wouldn't have took that hard step forward, then that lineage or that seed planted wouldn't have been able to grow in me, which grew in my grandmother, which is his daughter, and then grew in me, which, you know, that makes me very proud, because I am 5 generations back of a voter. And I like to have my voice heard. I want my voice heard, because without my voice being heard, my change will not come. And I want my change to come to what I want to see. What I want to see in our community as inclusiveness. What I want to see in our community as togetherness. What I want to see in our community as moving forward and having a legacy of financial wealth, real estate wealth, and it starts with voting. That vote makes a difference.
It depends on who's listening to what we're saying, who's hearing and who's acting on it. What is your response to our issues and our concerns? And it makes me think right now, everyone here in Middle Tennessee are focused on the mass shooting in Nashville. I think one of the most horrific mass shootings to take place in this country, if you can say that, most horrific, because all of them were horrible and should not have happened. and should not continue to happen. But we are looking at that. And people have voices and opinions. Those voices must be heard. You know, you can't shut them off. You can't shut the voices out by saying, this is what we're going to do, and not considering what the people are asking for. We see now that many of the rights that have been gained over the years are now in jeopardy because people don't listen to what, and I shouldn't say people, but I want to say those who have been elected by the people are not listening to everybody. So we really have to get off of this party thing and consider that who is doing what I'm asking.
I say this with all my heart. I am a young country boy who started out with nothing, who God has put me on a path, and with my understanding of what my vote does and what it can do, I have accelerated to the highest you could be in the military as an officer, a warrant officer. And that was because of that vote. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to go to college. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to, be an officer. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be right now, and I'm not tooting my horn, but with my family and my MVP, my most valuable person, my wife, we wouldn't be the first African-American auctioneer company in the state of Tennessee.
So it's about becoming the agency for advancement ourselves and not be solely dependent on others. And it's up to us. We have the power and the ability to make that happen, to put folks in position of power, political power. I think one of the things we need to realize is that democracy is on a downturn, and it's up to us to preserve it, to strengthen it. And it takes voting to do that. It takes voting to combat the forces that dilute our voices.
Lots of people signed up to vote, and the voting, as far as I could tell coming up as a youngster before I was of age to vote, was strong and mighty, because we knew that was our voice speaking, was to cast that ballot on that piece of paper back in the day and be counted and be heard.
There are people who don't have the voice that I do, and who may be timid, but I am willing to step up and speak up for them. And these voices must be heard. This is a source of the voices.